I have a secret to tell.
I'm a big fan of space exploration, and I think it's great that so many new countries are beginning to get involved. It means that someday Djibouti will colonize Uranus. No refunds. Hey everybody, it's great to see you here tonight. My name is VANDY BETH, and I'm here to tell you my story. I'm a writer and a stand-up comedian here in the Atlanta area. I live out in Decatur with all the other lesbians. I love Rita Hayworth, the theories of Charles Darwin, and reading about shipwrecks. I consider myself a dog person, but I don't own a dog. Instead, I have 7 cats. We all embody contradictions, don't we? Could I have some applause, everybody here who is a native of Georgia? All right, yeah. There aren't so many of us these days. I myself am a proud Georgia native. I was born in Piedmont Hospital, the only time in my life I've been able to afford to live in Buckhead. I was a cesarean section, which proves that when God closes a door, he opens a window. My gender reveal party was a little late. I had to throw it for myself. Oh, my parents were surprised. It's a girl, Mom and Dad. Yay! Eat your pink cake. Right, so I am transgender. I know you've been hearing a lot about us in the news lately. People complaining that we're playing college sports, trying to get on college swim teams. I just want to reassure you all, you don't need to worry about that with me. I'm not joining any swim teams. I am not a strong swimmer. My dog paddle is an insult to dogs. My freestyle is an insult to freedom. And my butterfly stroke is an insult to people who've had strokes. I'm not going to be breaking any women's sports records. When I go bowling, I can't even break 50. Only once have I ever even knocked down all the pins, and that was 2 lanes over with my shoe. I mean, I do like to exercise. I'm a runner, but even there, all the testosterone's drained out of my body, and that makes a big difference in strength and speed. Most other women still have a little bit of testosterone, and other women, when they run, they don't have to drag the weight of a male skeleton along with them. I don't mean my own skeleton. My Uncle Steve was always very supportive. I like to keep him with me. Yeah, but so obviously my pronouns are she, her, and hers. My prepositions are under, through, and betwixt. My interrogatives are who, when, and what? I admit, I do kind of resent having to say my pronouns. I mean, I get it. If everybody would just share their pronouns without having to be asked, then nobody's feelings would ever be hurt, and we'd be living in a slightly better world. But on the other hand, I paid a lot for these tits. Evolution is real, but these were intelligently designed. My cleavage is a Silicon Valley. To paraphrase Seinfeld, they're fake and they're spectacular. Sometimes when I'm wearing a tight shirt and I'm talking to some guy who's trying very carefully to maintain eye contact, and I have to say to him, hey, I'm down here. You know, so I didn't spend all that money so the cashier at Kroger can call me sir. But people think trans women are these exotic alien creatures. I live my life just like any other woman. I wake up in the morning, take a shower, brush my teeth, shave my knuckles, and get on with my day. But I think you've all heard a story like mine before. When I was born, my parents thought I was a boy, and they named me Glenn. For the first few decades of my life, I tried to go along with that. Grown-ups know best, right? But I always knew better, always. No, I wasn't groomed by some pervert when I was small. I mean, one look at me and you can tell. Grooming is not a major factor in my life. Some people are just born trans. 1.5% of the population has red hair. The same number is trans. It's biological. Well, it's neurological, which makes it biological. It's real. You can fight it, and most of us do. But in the end, it always wins. What is it like to be transgender? Well, it's like having tinnitus. Only instead of that ringing in your ears, it's like a constant voice whispering inside your head, telling you every single day that the life you're living is wrong, that you're just pretending to be the gender marked on your birth certificate, that living with that pretense is unsustainable, that eventually you're going to have to do something about it. And that voice gets louder, year after year, louder and louder, a continual rising shout, until finally it becomes so unbearable that there are only two options left to you. And only one of those options lets you keep living. I reached that crossroads about 20 years ago. I decided I wanted to keep living. So I went to a therapist and I got an official diagnosis. Then I went to a pharmacist and I got my first prescription. I was on my way. I was still presenting to the world as a man, but I was on the path to becoming the woman you see before you today. There were certain milestones that I wanted to check off along the way before finally making the switch, and I was taking my time. It was a marathon, not a sprint. When I began this journey, I was working up in Alpharetta in IT. The money was good. The commute from East Atlanta Village was not good. Plus, I hated the work. I mean, come on, it was IT. You can only spend so many years of your life resetting passwords and asking people to make sure their PC is plugged in. But later that same year, I got an opportunity to become an editor at the Office of Legislative Counsel at the Georgia State Capitol, the Gold Dome. I was so excited. It would mean a big pay cut, but the commute would be a lot better. And the work would be in editing and proofreading, which I've always loved doing. I was a journalism major in college, and I copy edited the university newspaper. I've taken freelance proofreading gigs ever since. I just love correcting people's English. So good to help people. I resent the term grammar Nazi. It's not like I break into people's houses and tie them down and then forcibly edit their grocery lists and emails. I don't do that anymore. Plus, this job would be sort of a family tradition. My distant cousin, Ernest Vandenberg, was governor of Georgia from 1959 to 1963. He was an important figure in the battle over segregation. I think he was on the side that you know what? It's not important what side he was on. The point is, there was a precedent. Plus, I'd be going from the private sector to the public sector, which made me feel like I'd have better job security when I eventually came out. You know, government jobs are always safe. So I took the job. I joined the team that edits legislation for the Georgia General Assembly. It was, in many ways, the best job I've ever had. It was tailor-made for my skill set. Most of the year there wasn't so much work to do, but when there was a lot of it. The General Assembly only meets for 40 days each year, so they have to get a year's worth of lawmaking done in that length of time. The work came in torrents, like the biblical 40 days of rain. Be it enacted, Georgia shall mint its own silver coins. Be it enacted, alcohol sales shall be allowed on Sundays. Be it enacted, certain people get tax breaks. Yes. Be it enacted, certain other people get tax hikes. Ooh. Be it enacted, red clay shall be the official state dirt. The bills ranged from the silly to the serious, day in, day out. We'd edit them. One bill became two. Two bills became one. Some bills were plainly illegal. Some bills were redundant with existing law. Some bills were new town charters. They tended to be long. Super long. Town charter bills were nuts, even though they were mostly boilerplate. They established the new town's boundaries, set up the duties of the mayor and city council, established local law enforcement, and for some reason, they always include language saying the new town can pass laws governing fortune tellers and palm readers. Bet you didn't see that coming. After we edited the bills, we took them back to the attorneys who had drafted them, who took them back to the legislators who had asked for them. We never saw the legislators themselves. We barely saw the attorneys. They all had outboxes on the outside of their office doors. We just dropped the bills in. The editor's office was our own private world, deep inside the bowels of the Gold Dome. We didn't even have any windows. During the legislative session, we worked there sometimes well into the night, pasty-faced cave dwellers, seeing only each other in 8.5 by 14-inch pages that defined our lives. It was difficult, strange, isolating work, and I loved every goddamn minute of it. During those 40 days each year, I didn't think about my transition or my future or anything else. I lived and breathed the state government, and it was all I cared about. The General Assembly was a complex 19th century machine made of pistons and boilers, powered by hot air, and I was proud to be one of its cogs. There were 5 editors, 4 subordinate editors like me, and our supervisor. She reported to the senior attorney, whose name was Sewell Brumby. We never saw him, except on birthdays when we all gathered in the kitchen for cake. Sometimes not even then. He only spoke to the other attorneys and to the legislators, never to the editors. But I was still transitioning. All the other editors knew it. Several of the secretaries and attorneys knew it too. Nobody cared. It was just a curious fact about me. They may have known or guessed that I would eventually want to complete my transition and come into the office as myself. I don't think they thought about it one way or the other. I was living 2 lives. Outside the office, I was Vandy Beth Glenn, glamorous woman about town. inside the office, I was pretending I was still Glenn Vandiver Morrison, depressed grammar nerd. It was kind of exhausting. I was living two lives, but I wasn't a superhero. By late 2007, I knew the time had come to integrate my two lives. I just had to begin coming into the office as myself. This didn't take as long in rehearsal. The tinnitus was screaming at me. My legal name change was in process. I was about to have a fairly major surgery. The time had come. I didn't know how it would go. There had been some hints over the previous couple of years that maybe it wouldn't go all that well. So I contacted Lambda Legal. Lambda Legal is an LGBT law firm and civil rights advocates. They have an office here in Atlanta. I called them up and told them what I was about to do. They told me they couldn't actually help me until and unless I got fired. They did give me some pamphlets and brochures. They were written from the perspective of a boss trying to help an employee and the workplace itself to navigate a workplace gender transition, sort of a what to expect when you're expecting a sex change. I was to give them to my boss, who, again, was named Sewell Brumby. Some words now about Mr. Brumby. I imagine he has had many challenges in his life. For starters, his name is Sewell. As someone later pointed out to me, that's a name like a villain in a Charles Dickens novel. In the proper context, he should have been running a Victorian workhouse, not an office at the Georgia State Capitol. But it makes sense that his name would evoke the 19th century because I think that's when he was born. Everything about him was an anachronism. He had a fashion sense that was not so much Brooks Brothers as it was 1970s Sears and Roebuck wish book. He was clearly not a man who embraced change. He was born and raised in Athens, Georgia, stayed there to go get his bachelor's in law degrees at UGA, and then after law school came to the Capitol. He had worked there ever since. I'm sorry, did I say he came to the Capitol? He was already there. They built it around him. He was the most humorless and unhappy man I have ever met. I never once saw him laugh or crack a smile. I don't know if his parents warned him his face would freeze like that, but his face froze like that. Anyway, through my supervisor, I passed along pamphlets and some general information about being transgender, and the word came back down. He had to think about it. He had to think about it? Remember, this was 2007. It was really hard to be transgender back then. You know, not like now. But as I saw it, being transgender is just a medical condition, like eczema. If I told him I had eczema, he would have just said, well, good luck with your treatment. He wouldn't have said, I have to think about it. But that's what he said. A month passed. Then, on the morning of October 16th, a Tuesday, sitting at my desk, the phone rings. I answer it. It's Mr. Brumby. He wants me to come down to his office. I say, okay. And then I walk down the stairs, walk down the hall to the restroom, step into the restroom. Now, since I'm in the restroom at this point in the story, I'd like to say a few words about public restrooms. I knew a lot of things were going to be more difficult when I transitioned, but I did at least hope I'd be trading up to a better quality of public restrooms. Superficially, men's rooms and women's rooms are the same. They both had toilets, they both had vending machines. Although the gum in the men's room vending machines tastes terrible. But you'd think women's rooms would be great. There's always a line to get in. Sometimes when you're walking past and the door is open and a nice floral scent comes wafting out and you can catch a glimpse of a comfortable couch, outer room, and you think, oh yeah, how nice. But then you walk through to where the toilets are. No. That's when I learned women don't sit on public toilets. They hover over them. Like a helicopter fighting a forest fire. It's disgusting. I'm not a germaphobe or anything, but I try to draw the line at sitting in someone else's urine. And men aren't the most fastidious creatures, we all know this. But at least they aim for the hole. They take pride in it. If they printed numbers on urinal cakes, men would compare their scores to each other. That's why, when it's an option, I always prefer the family restroom. There's usually just one toilet and one sink. They're kept very clean. And for reasons I've never fully understood, they always have that fold-down desk attached to the wall. With straps to tie your laptop to. So those are great. I get some of my best work done. But at the Office of Legislative Counsel, this wasn't a family restroom or even a public restroom. It was just a tiny closet with a toilet and a sink. There wasn't even a sign on the door that said toilet. You just had to know that's what it was. But anyway, went in there for a minute, and I came back out, walked down the hall, and then down the stairs to Mr. Bromby's office. My supervisor was there too, but she never said a word. Is it true, he said, that you have formed a fixed intention to become a woman? Well, I never put it in those terms before. Because no human being has ever put anything in those terms before. But, yes, sir. So, that is the case. And he said, well, I'm afraid that cannot appropriately happen in this workplace. I have to dismiss you. I tried to plead my case, but he wouldn't hear it. He said that having to work with a trans person would make my coworkers uncomfortable. He said the legislators that we all worked for would think that I was immoral. And like I said, most of my coworkers already knew at this point. And the legislators never even came to our office. I never once, in the course of doing my job, met one of the legislators. This is what he said. And I kind of understood his dilemma. On the one hand, the legislators who he considered his bosses were all conservative, fundamentalist, Republican Christians. And on the other hand, well, there was no other hand. It was an empty one hand. So that was it. I was fired. I was given a few minutes to gather up my things, and then I was escorted out of the Capitol. And I was heartbroken, you know? Because I loved that job. But I was also angry. I was fired just for being transgender. It's not like I had eczema. So I went back to Land Legal and I told them what had happened. They thought I might have a case for wrongful termination. They did a lot of research. It took months. But finally, they agreed to take my case. Even back then, there were a few precedents that were a little helpful in the case of a trans person being wrongly fired. But also, they were really interested in those two words, uncomfortable and immoral. It turns out, in a wrongful termination case, those terms are what are called red flag words. If you fire somebody because you're worried about the discriminatory thoughts of somebody else, courts really don't like that. So we brought this up when we filed our lawsuit. And when they filed their answer to our lawsuit, Mr. Brumby and his attorney said, "Oh, well, no, I never said anything like that. I fired her because she was a bad employee." So there we are. We made a claim, and they said that that was an untrue claim. It's a classic he said, she said. Or, as Mr. Brumby might have put it, he said, it said. So at this point, one of two things could happen. The case could be dismissed because there's no way to prove anything. Or the case could be accepted, work its way through the federal courts, get to the district court, and go on to the appeals court, and then I would get my job back. Right now, it might have looked like proof being an insurmountable barrier to our side of the case. But now we entered the discovery phase. And when I had gone into the restroom that day, it wasn't to throw up, although I felt like it, or to empty my nervous bladder. It was to thread the wire from my microphone.
Yes!
Down with the recorder in my pocket. I captured the entire conversation. Our evidence included an MP3 file.
Come on!
Well, the federal courts move at a glacial pace. There were briefs, depositions, filings, and counterfilings. I was living in a sort of limbo, doing temp jobs, spending down my retirement funds, never feeling like I could move on until the grind was just inevitable. But finally, it did. It was over, and I won.
Yeah.
I got my job back. In 2011, I went back to the Capitol, and I went back to my job. I never got to find out what Mr. Brumby thought about that, because he no longer worked there.